However, you are listening, or wherever you are listening, thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the All Cardinals podcast. My name is Don Jordan, joined every week by my main man, Richie Bradshaw. Before we get into the nitty gritty, go and comment, like, subscribe, all that very fun YouTube stuff. Follow Richie on Twitter, or X, as it's called now. Richie Brads36. Follow me at Donnie Drew and Richie. A little plug, just because you threw up the fork. Go subscribe to Locked On Sun Devils really quick, too, while you're at it.
Doing a profile series. We're closing that out today, and then we gotta find some stuff to talk about. But it's going to be a good summer. I got some special stuff planned behind the scenes, so now's never been a better time.
Folks, that maybe we also have a lot of stuff to talk about. Voluntary OTAs kicked off this week. Your boy was there.
Woo!
Massive news if you haven't heard, or if you skipped over the egregiously made graphic by yours truly. Paris Johnson is moving to left tackle after starting at right tackle his rookie year. And to kind of give you a timeline of how this unveiled, Richie, Gannon came and talked to us before practice started and went through the whole thing. Somebody had asked about Yalde Froholt potentially playing at guard if they needed him to. And he's like, yeah, I like him at center. And then right before he leaves, he's like, oh, by the way, we're moving Paris to the left and Jonah's going to play on the right. And then says maybe one more thing about that, just walks out, just ends it there. He didn't drop the biggest news we've been arguably waiting for in the offseason.
Right.
We'll get into it just a little deeper. Overall thoughts?
I think it's a good move. I think that Paris Johnson was drafted to be one of your cornerstone tackles for a very obvious reason, but I also think that when you spend the number 6 overall pick on an offensive tackle, that they're probably going to be playing on the left side. And I think it's easy to forget that Paris Johnson played left tackle his last year of college. He played right tackle his sophomore year, and he played inside at guard / right tackle during his freshman year. He's got experience all across the offensive line. And the most recent experience collegiately was on the left side. And he did play well at right tackle last year. He obviously had some warts because he was a rookie. But you're curious how the transition is going to go from right tackle to left tackle. A lot of times guys will actually get therapy to get themselves in that mindset of making that switch over. The good news is Johnson does have some experience. It's not like you're throwing him to the wolves necessarily.
Yeah.
But it is going to be a transition. But at the end of the day, I think it's a good transition. I think it's something that you do right now in his second year instead of 4 years down the road. It's better to try things out now. And if it doesn't work, then you just move him back to right tackle either halfway through the season or his third year in the pros. It's not like this is you have to play left tackle thing.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't call it an experiment either because he has left tackle experience. This is a move that I think makes the most sense. We'll talk about Jonah Williams too and why I think that's a good decision, but I don't think this is a big surprise for me personally. I can't speak on the rest of the fan base, but it's a move that I think makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely do think it makes sense. We'll break both sides of it down between Johnson and Jonah. We'll start with Paris. Just a little track record on him. You had already previously alluded to it. Played left tackle at Ohio State his last year before entering the draft. Got drafted, and Richie, do you remember after he got drafted, we were like, well, if he wants to start, he might have to start at left guard, because DJ Humphries and Kelvin Beachum are your guys, and it made me kick out to tackle. After his rookie season, he unseated Kelvin Beachum at right tackle. His numbers on the screen, courtesy of Pro Football Focus, they don't jump off the page. They're not great. He's not winning Rookie of the Year by any means. I think it played a lot better than what the numbers show. 8 sacks allowed, 12 penalties, 8 quarterback hits, 42 total pressures allowed. Everybody talks about the left side of the line of scrimmage and the left tackle and protecting Kyler Murray's blind side, and that's big. I definitely want to get that out there, but we need to stop acting like this is 20, 30 years ago. There are very quality edge rushers on the right side of the line of scrimmage, man. And like you need Paris Johnson or whoever's playing there to be able to hold his end of the bargain up, regardless of who's at left tackle. I was of the mindset that Paris was going to stay at right tackle, and some other people were. It wasn't a really popular opinion, only because he had already laid the groundwork of a fairly good rookie season at right tackle, and I was in favor of letting him build on that. Now, I ultimately, after taking some time, and I'm glad we did take some time to record this instead of doing it immediately, because I do think some of my thoughts and my opinions have changed. I think I do agree with you. I do think for the future and the overall big picture, Johnson is more of a quote unquote natural left tackle. And that's a lot of the great tape you saw at Ohio State was him playing at left tackle. I think regardless, if he plays at left, if he plays at the right, you drafted him number 6 overall to be a cornerstone to protect Kyler Murray. And I think he could do that on both sides of the ball. And like, not to dive too deep into Jonah, but like, I think Jonah's very capable of playing on the left or right as well. So overall, though, I don't think it's a bad decision. It's just a little, it caught me a little off guard. It shouldn't have, but I was expecting Paris to stay on the right side. So
I think that's one of the things that you like about bringing in Jonah Williams is like the things that you said about Paris Johnson, where he got experience at right tackle. You feel like he was drafted to be moved to the left side. That was kind of the experiment the Bengals ran with Jonah Williams. Was he started right tackle and then he moved to the left side. Remember, they had I think Andrew Whitworth was there, or it was their replacement for Whitworth. I can't remember, but he had experience at both sides. He definitely had more success on the right side, which is one of the reasons why I think it makes sense for him to go to the right side. Is again, Paris Johnson is so young that this is the time to see if he can play left, while Jonah Williams is the veteran who can play both sides, but he is a more established and better player on the right side. So from that standpoint, I think it makes the most sense. But Williams is another guy that's got the versatility, which is where did you have that ready to go?
yeah, I had a video. I didn't know I was going to add it right away. Sorry, continue.
No, you're good. I'll wrap this up. But when I said that you experiment with Paris at left, if it doesn't work, then you move him back to right. It's because you have Jonah Williams. Because if Paris doesn't work out, you know what you have with Jonah Williams. You can just flip flop them and still feel comfortable with the lineup that you have.
Yeah, and I will agree. Now's the time to do it if you were going to make the switch. It's still very early, and like I don't think it's going to be like a seamless transition for Paris because everybody you talk to that moves from left to right or vice versa talks about just how different it is and how night and day it is going from left to right or right to left. But I mean, even not even just the scope of like Paris's career, but just for 2024. If you're going to do it, now's the time. Like, do not wait until training camp. Do not wait until week 1 or wherever you might be preseason to make this change. Like, let them get the foundation a little bit early and then move from there. And I do want to highlight, and funny enough, I think it's mentioned in the video, the Cardinals seem pretty confident in the change in both Paris and Jonah doing this. Gannon also said that he reserves the right to move them back, where he's saying, hey, we're not going to be married to it. This isn't in concrete. If we feel like this is not working, we will make the change. And that's something I really did like. So here's the video.
How's that transition going to be?
Yeah, I think it's going to be good. Paris obviously playing both, Jonah playing both. We'll start there and see how it goes. But through the first 3 weeks on the grass, that's what they've been doing. That's what they're both comfortable with right now. So see how it looks. But I do have the veto power to switch them back, right?
We made eye contact a couple times where we kind of just looked at each other like, and then we just kind of sat back into it. But it's at the end of the day, we're all here to do what's best for the team. Nobody here is thinking about themselves or where they want to play. So we're all good with whatever the coaches want to do. And either way, I know he's going to thrive out there on the left side, and he's going to do a hell of a job. And I'm excited to see it.
I don't really. It doesn't have a super effect on me. Obviously, if I go over to left guard and play a little bit there or whatever, then obviously I'm gonna play with him a little bit. But I mean, all I know is that Paris is taking responsibility on to be, the left tackle and, kind of the guy over there on the left side, and he looks smooth. He looks natural. He's played there before, so there's nothing there from him. He's just willing to. He's at a different level too. I think for him hitting in the year 2 compared to rookie year, where it's like, okay, now I'm taking an extra step. He's like, I want to be even better than what I was, and he's like, I know what it is to expect of me and the game and the tempo and everything. So it's really cool to see where Paris is at, even with a little caveat switch positions. But he's killing it.
Yeah, so a lot of praise coming from the Cardinals, and not that they were ever going to be negative about this or unsure or anything like that, but especially y'all's comments about talking to Paris and Paris saying, "Look, I'm in my second year. I know what's expected of me." It is really nice to hear that. Look, like, this guy's not taking anything for granted. Like, he understands the work that is going to be needed to become a franchise left tackle, and he's willing to do it.
I think at the end of the day, that's one of the biggest things that you need from your offensive lineman is the mentality and the understanding of what your assignment is, because you could be center, you could be right guard, you could be left tackle. At the end of the day, you still need to understand your assignment. You need to be willing to adjust on the fly. There's times where you are forced to move around the offensive line, and again, that could be the situation this year. Is if Paris does not look good through 5 starts, then you have to have the conversation about moving him back to right tackle. Is it ideal? No, not even in the slightest. But you need to be able to pivot when you have situations like that. And I think that's something that you really appreciate with Paris Johnson, is understanding, like, hey, I know what they're looking for from me in year 2. I'm going to figure it out. Me and Jonah are going to play good together. They're implying like, hey, we're going to play to each other's strengths, and we're going to find a way to be bookend tackles with each other. That's what you need at the end of the day, Donnie, is guys that understand their assignment, guys that are willing to adapt on the fly, and guys that understand the expectations that are being placed upon them. And for what it's worth, I mean, Paris is saying all the right things. Now, as long as he's able to adjust, then, I think this is a good decision at the end of the day.
No, I agree. And I think this all boils down to how Paris will ultimately transition. I'm pretty confident he can figure it out. I think he's very talented, but more importantly, he, like you said, he's willing to put the work in. Like, he is going to put the long hours in to become this left tackle everybody thinks he can be. Hopefully he does emerge into it. And obviously it just benefits everybody if he does. I'm curious though, because we talked about this before we started recording. If for whatever reason Paris does not work out on the left side of the line, you've brought up that you can always move him back to the right side. Part of me hesitates with that, just because he would be going on to, I guess not technically his third spot, but like playing 3 different spots back to back years. Do you look at this as like a rookie season for Paris at left tackle? Or like, is the leash a little bit shorter? Like, how would you approach that?
I think it's such a interesting situation, because it's not like you're placing him in a position he's never played before.
Mm-hmm.
But fair. At the same time, and in the same token, he also has spent a professional career, or as professional season, excuse me, not a collegiate season, playing at the right side. And the competition is a lot more stiff. You have to understand that he's going up against the Nick Bosas of the world, the Uchenna Nwosus before he tore his ACL, and the Boye Mafes, and the Byron Murphys of the world. Not Byron Murphy, Byron whatever. I can't think of his name. Yes, exactly.
Yep.
That's just your division. Like, he has that experience playing on the right side. Again, it is such a drastic change for these guys. You have to understand that it's not just a mindset. It's literal, like, repetition and body movement of these guys knowing how to kick out of their stance, and guys understanding how they line up and everything. So I can totally understand your viewpoint of like, hey, this probably isn't ideal. My idea here is just kind of like, here's a backup plan if things don't work out. But obviously, yeah, if you can keep him on the left side of the line for the entirety of the season, that's probably the most ideal. If he gives up 6 sacks over 4 games, you have to have a conversation.
No, I would agree. Somebody on Twitter had asked me over under on Paris Johnson's sacks next year, 6.5. He gave up 8 last year. I would hope with a healthy Kyler Murray, he'll be able to avoid some more of that trouble if needed. But also, it's just like another year in the pros. And the point I was going to bring up was in college, especially at left tackle, you're normally one of the best players on the field. Like if you're a blue chip prospect like Paris Johnson was, you're normally the best player in the field. You go to the NFL, that bar kind of resets a little bit. And then that's when the details matter. That's when the little things you do right now in April, May, June, that's when those start to come to fruition. That's when they really matter. Because the NFL is a game of inches, right? Every little thing adds up that you do. I'm confident in Paris's preparation. I'm confident in his confidence. I'm confident in everybody else's confidence. Um, Hopefully it works out. Dude, who knows? We could be talking about this right now. And Jonathan Gannon, halfway through training camp, is like, you know what? I think Paris might be a little bit better on the right, or I think Jonah might be better on the left. We'll make this change. But I do like the versatility of both.
Right.
And I think that's a good transition into Jonah Williams and his side of this. Jonah played right tackle for 1 year at Alabama early in his career. From there, kind of took off as a left tackle. Last offseason with the Bengals, traded for Orlando Brown. He requested a trade. And so whenever he signed here on a 2-year, $30 million deal, after he requested the trade last offseason, I'm like, okay, seems like he doesn't want to play on the right side. I asked him at his introductory press conference, do you know where you're going to play? He said, no, I'll do whatever the team wants me to do. I asked Paris multiple times throughout this offseason if he knows where he's going to play. He says, no, I'll do whatever the team wants me to do. And to their credit, I think they're both being very selfless. I think they will line up where they want to go, or where the Cardinals want them to go. It's interesting, Richie, because the numbers don't really back it up, but you believe Jonah Williams, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong, is a better right tackle than left tackle?
I do.
Okay.
I think Williams just looks really comfortable at the position. And I think that, so what's so interesting is, like you talk about historically, the left tackle is more of your technical guy and your right tackle is more of your power guy. And I think that Jonah is able to blend a little bit of both. If you ask me to lean one way or the other, I do think he's a more technical guy, but I also feel that he's someone that has that versatility enough to play either side of the line. And if you're going to experiment with Paris Johnson at left tackle, which is probably the right thing to do in his second year as the 6th overall pick, then Williams is more than fine at right tackle. And he's got the most recent experience playing the right side of the line for the Cincinnati Bengals. He had a quality season, not an elite season, but I also think that, especially when you look at like the PFF stuff, like it can be subjective at times. I'm not dismissing it completely because I do
They
think
were
that PFF
also dealing with like Joe Burrow injuries
not being
as
healthy.
well.
Right.
Yeah.
And then going to Jake Browning, who is better than Joe Burrow? Question mark. No, do you remember those conversations people were having?
I try to forget them.
Dude, so there was off topic. Someone was like, "Oh yeah, Joe Burrow's a system quarterback," and like, I really hope it was a joke, but it's just funny, I guess. But neither here nor there. The point being here is that Jonah Williams has the most recent play time at right tackle, and I think that a veteran staying at right tackle makes more sense than a second-year player staying at right tackle when you want to experiment with them. I think that, as we've said, this is the time to see if Paris Johnson can play left tackle. And if he can't, then you put him back where he's comfortable and you move a guy who's got left tackle experience back to the left side. But again, I think this is the time to experiment. I think this is the time to see where Paris is comfortable with, because you know where Jonah Williams is comfortable with. There's no question about that. That's the reason why I like this. Is I think that this is the appropriate time to take a look, test it out, see how it works, see if it doesn't work, and then make adjustments accordingly.
Shout out to Locked On Cards, because I actually just did an episode with Alex before I hopped on here and we started recording, and we were talking about this Paris moving to the left side, and he said the Cardinals are going to win-win. Like they have two guys who can start at either left or right tackle, and then they have a swing tackle in Kelvin Beachum as a backup to either of them. Like the Cardinals are in a good spot, and I feel like I would definitely agree with that. The PFF numbers are ugly for Jonah Williams. I mean, just looking at the grades, I mean, he graded some like top to bottom his worst year as a pro, but like so many different factors play into that. But I do want to highlight something Will Hernandez also said. I'm not sure if it was in the video I put up there, but Will's basically like, hey, like they're not bringing in any regular Joe. Like they brought in Jonah Williams to switch from left to right tackle. He's a pro. Jonah's a veteran. Jonah knows what's expected. And he's like, I think the same exact thing that happened last year with me and Paris is going to happen again this year with me and Jonah, which is clicking, getting that continuity, and really forming that wall we saw on the right side of Arizona's line in 2023. Hopefully that'll be the case in 2024. Before we move on, because like obviously I don't think we've talked about Zay Jones on the pod. This doesn't need to be absolute. This doesn't need to be definitive. But I'll ask you, no hindsight, do you think this is the right move?
I do. I think that the Cardinals are doing a really good job retooling their wide receiver room. It's obviously quite a different unit from what you had the last handful of years. There's no DeAndre Hopkins. There's no Marquise Brown. There's no Rondale Moore. They are retooling the unit. And you obviously got the big piece. You got the prized possession with Marvin Harrison Jr. Greg Dortch is back. Michael Wilson is back. But I do think that you still need an established player right now. Greg Dortch doesn't have a lot of starts. Michael Wilson doesn't have a lot of starts, if any. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a rookie. You need a veteran in that room, somebody who has been around a long time, somebody who is good at what he does. And that's where Zay Jones comes in. And Zay Jones is a very quality route runner. And he's someone that can make the tough grabs, shrug off the big hits. And, you know, it's that classic, like you need 4 yards, Zay will get you 7. You need 7 yards, Zay will get you 9. Like you're just comfortable knowing that Zay can be a chain mover for you. And he has been a high volume guy. During his first year at Jacksonville, I mean, he caught 70 or 80 passes somewhere in that frame. He is more than capable of being a high volume guy, somebody that you can just get the ball to across the middle of the field. Like it's third medium, third and long. Marvin Harrison Jr. isn't able to get the deep route going. I'll just go to Zay Jones 10 yards over the middle of the field. And you just feel comfortable having that conversion player. That's where I really like this pickup. And again, you needed a veteran in that room. Zay Jones is a veteran in that room.
Nope, 100%. Before we dive deeper into the Zay Jones talk, I previously said, and I've been on record, this has been through a handful of pods that we've done in the offseason. If it were up to me, I would have kept Paris on the right side, and I would have let him go and develop. But unfortunately, there are people who know a little bit more about the Arizona Cardinals and a little bit more about the game of football than I do that are calling the shots there. So if they feel like moving Paris to the left is a good decision, they probably know a little bit better than I do. I think Paris is a very capable young man to get the job done. He obviously played at left tackle at Ohio State, which from my understanding is no program to shake a stick at, regardless of my actual feelings towards them.
Ohio State, Mr. Druin.
Yeah, you'll never catch me saying that.
No one.
Regardless at the end of the day, I do agree. I do think it's a good move after sitting and taking some time to think it. Like Alex said in Locked On Cards, I think it's a win-win, and I think I kind of carry that same sentiment. Am I boring you?
No, not at all. No, not at all. I had to stretch.
That looked like a yawn.
No, not at all. That was a stretch.
Yeah.
You're
All right,
not
let's
boring me
move
right
on.
now.
Well, yeah, let's move on to something that might bore you. Zay Jones, you hit the nail on the head. Whenever you were just talking about him, Jonathan Gannon said he fits the price of admission, and that's kind of become one of his catchphrases, just in terms of being a good person first. Because if you're not a good person, you're not going to be available on the field. You're not going to do things the right way, and you're not going to reach your ceiling as a football player. Zay Jones, not the squeakiest clean pass, but has definitely kind of gotten his stuff together. Banged up by injuries last year, really unfortunate. I think he played 9 games. Really held him back, but the year before, I mean, he looked great. And something I really like about Zay is he is what Gannon called a 3-position player. He could play either of the boundary spots. He could play in the slot, and I think just overall, Richie, that raises the floor for this young receiving core that has Marvin, Greg Dortch, and then Michael Wilson.
The other thing I really like, Donnie, is you got size. Michael Wilson is 6'2". Marvin Harrison Jr. 6'4". I think Zay Jones is 6'1". Like, you're giving Kyler Murray some good size to be able to just throw those balls up. Something that I have always really valued in a receiver is lengthy guys that I can throw up and get those 50-50 ball opportunities. And you got arguably your top 3 receivers now that can all be those post-up guys. I like that for the offense. I like that for Kyler Murray. I think this is a very good situation and scenario that he's being placed in at this point. So it's just a good decision for me that presses a lot of different buttons.
Yeah, like he wasn't expensive. It's a 1-year, $4.25 million deal. The Cardinals have plenty of cap space to work with. It's not like they were burning money, and I think that deal was up to 4.25. So there might be some incentives in there. I'll have to go look. If he can stay healthy, like I said, he raises the floor of the offense, of the receiver room, gives Kyler another big body target, like you had highlighted. Seems like a great guy, a veteran to kind of show everybody the way if absolutely needed. If he's not, and really quick, like where do you project him on this depth chart? Because he's not going to start over Marv.
I probably put him 2.
You think so?
I do, but I put him in the slot.
Really?
Yes. I have him, as of right now, off the top of my head, wide receiver 2. I put him in the slot and have Michael Wilson as my other boundary receiver. Dude, Zay Jones is such a good slot receiver. We've seen him do it throughout his career. That's kind of the niche that he has really found for himself. I think it's a perfect spot for him. I think it just makes a lot of sense to take the savvy veteran who can make the tough grabs, put him in the slot. I don't need him running fly routes. I don't need him running 15, 20-yard corner routes. I want him across the middle of the field. I want him in the flat. I want him somewhere where the first read's not there, second read's not there. We're going to go to the established guy. That's where I like Zay Jones, but I do think he's wide receiver 2 on this depth chart.
I don't know, man. I don't
what
know.
Do you know, Donnie?
I nothing. I thought Paris was going to stay on the right, so not a whole lot. I do think Zay Jones is a better receiver than Greg Dortch. I don't know if the Cardinals brought Zay Jones in to start over Greg Dortch in the slot. I think everything they do, it'll shake out in training camp, but I think everything they do will be very matchup dependent, and I think that's why you like a guy like Zay Jones, because if you need him in the slot against maybe like a bigger guy or whatever personnel the other defense is running, you can put him there.
Yes.
If you need him on the boundary, if you need like a 4-receiver set, you have a good 4th receiver. At very worst case scenario, you have a guy who plays all 3 spots. You have depth. Maybe just not forgetting, but maybe I'm just like downplaying how good Zay Jones is. But like at least for me, I'm walking into this offseason with Greg Dortch as a starting receiver, and he needs to lose that job before Zay Jones can win it. And that's not a discredit to Zay Jones at all. I think there's a reason why the Jaguars moved on from him and took Brian Thomas in the first round and then released him. But it's an exciting ad. I do not know as of right now where he kind of fits in my head in terms of like the pecking order.
And I think that's a fair assumption, is that Greg Dortch is potentially the starter for the team. I'm just curious if he ends up seizing that role, because I don't know that Greg Dortch is a full-time starter just yet. He could absolutely develop into that role. I just know that Zay Jones has a lot of starts under his belt, and that's where I'm more comfortable putting him in as a starter. And it's not that Dortch isn't going to have a big role in this offense, Donnie. That's not what I'm trying to insinuate here.
Yeah.
But I just think right now you probably lean towards the guy who's been there, done that.
Well, see, I don't know. I think Dortch has been uber productive in every opportunity he's gotten.
Dude, I'm a big Dortch fan for sure. No slight to Greg Dortch.
No. There is no Dortch slander here.
None.
It'll be interesting, but it's good. And like Jonathan Gannon told us, everybody's competing for the roles. Nobody really has their spot solidified. And so I think it will make the competition better, and I think it overall raises the talent and just the healthy competition, like I pointed out in the receiver room. Before we dip, that's all I got. Do you have anything else? Anything to plug? Add?
No, I think we touched all our bases.
All right. Well, for Richie Bradshaw, I am Donnie Druin. Thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the All Cardinals podcast. Follow Richie on Twitter at RichieBrads36. Follow me on Twitter at Donnie Druin. Comment, like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. Subscribe to us. Subscribe to Locked On Sun Devils, and we will see you guys next time.